What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Bills Chat Live. We are back for the season live here every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Josh time. Luka, how are you feeling about this Bills Jets matchup coming up on Sunday?
I'm feeling good. I'm finally down from the high. It's the emotional high of Sunday night. I got there about yesterday, I would say, and it's just like the Bills seem to handle it, at least publicly. I'm already, as the title even says, I'll focus on the Jets. It's all about getting 1-0 this week. That whole mentality, I feel like it's a great way to handle things, even as a Bills fan. So I'm all about that. And I'm feeling early thoughts on this. I'm feeling pretty good about it. I mean, it's an interesting one just because, as we'll probably talk about it a bit, there's a lot of surprise and intrigue going into this matchup that I don't think would have been there pre-week one. If we didn't see what week one was, I feel like I would have a lot different of thoughts and opinions and kind of feelings going into this matchup at the Meadowlands to play the Jets in our first divisional game of the season.
Well, you know how it works. When the Bills have a game like they did week one, where they have an emotional victory against a massive opponent like Baltimore, and then they turn around and now they're 7-point favorites against an opponent that's not looked at as highly as the Jets. You talk about a sandwich game. And for whatever it's worth, the Bills 4 days later are going to be taking on Miami on Thursday Night Football. This could be a classic look ahead spot. And I think that is the talking point of the week is if these teams played head to head, all things being equal, there wouldn't be a whole lot of concern that the Bills would lose this matchup. So you have to manufacture ways to get worried about it, right? And one thing you can do is you can say, do you expect this to be a sandwich spot for the Bills? I put out a tweet prior to us going live saying, I have absolutely zero fear about that in this spot. And I will tell you why. And Luca, it goes back to something you said on our post-game show on Sunday. This was the perfect outcome for a coach like Sean McDermott. You get the win, but McDermott, a defensive coach, dove into that defensive film and saw a lot of things he hates. He talked about putting the players in pads on Wednesday already today. He said, we deserve a hard week of practice after what we saw on Sunday. And if you want to be elite, you have to practice elite. There was so much that went wrong defensively for the Bills in that game. And we talked about, and I think a lot of it was at the second level with people you don't expect it from, Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, Taylor Rapp, that even though the Bills won, in those defensive meeting rooms, it probably felt like a loss. And I think those three players in particular had a hit to their pride the way that game unfolded with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson running and throwing all over them. I do not expect the Bills to come out particularly defensively and be quote unquote feeling themselves and looking ahead. I expect a very focused effort from this Bills team. And that makes me not worried at all, especially defensively, about this being a look ahead spot.
I'm with you on that. Yeah, I love anytime as a fan you get to watch a game. It's ugly, and your team turns out the victory. As ugly as it was, and things weren't pretty, and in and out, it was just a disaster class. But somehow you squeaked it out. That I love when you hear individuals always say, and it's what I always latch to, is it's a coach's favorite win. And I'm with you where it's going to be very easy off of the emotional high of victory to just bring them back down to earth, ground them, and just be like, look, it's great to be 1-0. But the reality is we have to get right back to it. We have to get things straight because you have another game in a week that we need to have things figured out by, because, by the way, you're playing a team with a mobile quarterback and with offensive weapons that, as of right now, I mean, you look at it, they're some of the best. Well, two of them at least were phenomenal on Sunday. And it's like, you cannot take plays off against these individuals, one out wide and one in the backfield, that it's like, hey, figure it the F out. We can't be doing that again. You can't have Taylor Rapp just running the opposite direction, making business decisions. We need to actually do our jobs. So, it's the best of both worlds. You haven't cost yourself a win in the win column, and yet you have all the things to latch to and really just press players on to make sure their focus is on the following game, and you don't find yourselves kind of in that weird space of, as you called it, the sandwich game, where you kind of you're taking an eye off of it. You're looking ahead a little bit, which I don't think this team has that issue with even going into it anyways. But that lingering thought won't be there. You will be all focused on the next team. You'll be focused on the whatever the preparation is and the game planning and whatnot, so that hopefully you're at 100% ready to go come Sunday at 1:00 in New Jersey.
And I do wonder if this is like the perfect team for the Bills to play week 2. Let's get to Roy Collins' question real quick, though. Was Rapp the worst defender on the field? I think so, Roy. The only other player that even comes close in my mind was Terrell Bernard. Luka, this was the worst game I can remember Terrell Bernard playing since his rookie year, where he started one game against these Jets when he was still a very much a pup. He looked lost out there. But I have to go with Taylor Rapp just because it's not that he just looked lost. He almost looked disinterested in some regards. The term business decision came to mind here and there, and he needs a bounce back game in a big way. The reason why I say this is like the perfect opponent is the things they're going to be talking about that Ravens tape. You saw it time and time again, not knowing what to do at mesh point when it's the read option, the defensive end crashing down too hard and leaving way too much room for Lamar Jackson. That the linebackers just simply not filling their gaps. It wasn't like the defensive line didn't do a good job. It was simply linebackers not getting to their spots and leaving Cole Bishop out to dry on that long Derrick Henry run. And things like that for this opponent are perfect because the Jets are going to do a lot of the same things. In a lot of ways, the Jets are like the poor man's Ravens and maybe the broke man's Ravens. Okay. The Jets remind me of somebody that's never played Madden before, picking it up and using the Ravens. Like all the skills are kind of there, but Justin Fields can run close to Lamar, but not on Lamar's level, but he can't throw anywhere near in the stratosphere of Lamar. You and I both love Breece Hall, but Derrick Henry is in like the Saquon Barkley, everybody else take a seat level. And beyond that, the Jets have Garrett Wilson, the Ravens have Zay Flowers. That's pretty comparable. But then where you lose me is the Jets have Bateman, the Jets have DeAndre Hopkins, the Jets have Likely, who didn't play, and Andrews. Or I'm sorry, the Ravens do, and the Jets have Josh Reynolds and a rookie tight end. So that's where the comparisons get lost. I do think that this is a matchup that the Bills can get right on, and this is a matchup that the Bills can expose defensively and get their swagger back. But Luka, it's not lost on me that this Jets defense has given the Bills fits in the past, and we have seen Jets teams led by Zach Wilson at quarterback beat the Bills 2 years in a row. So is there any concerns when you flip it around about this Bills offense that just put up 41 points against the Ravens on Sunday Night Football, how they will go out there and execute offensively against this Jets team?
Not entirely. And the only reason I come to that is it's not the simple familiarity in regards to coaching. So it's a new staff in place with the Jets. So from that aspect, I think preparation, game planning, things of that nature. The last time we saw this coaching staff, or at least the head coach, when he was in a defensive capacity, he had scraps of a defense at the time, but it was the Lions. And well, Allen, in this offense did what it did against the Lions last season in the regular season. So there's that. But of course, there is a player and personnel familiarity where, of course, when it comes to our offense playing their defense, you have Sauce Gardner, who had a very good week 1. You have a lot of individuals out there that are familiar, like Leonard Williams as well. There are pieces that are going to understand what Allen and the offense are trying to do. The thing is, Allen is just at this point now, Josh, where, and this is not a hot take or new news, it's incredibly difficult to stay ahead of Josh Allen. You can confuse him a little bit. You can throw things at him and the, Joe Brady and the offense in general that will cause some confusion early on. And I bring up early on because the one thing we also love to talk about is the Bills may be one of the best second half teams in the sport because of how good they are at, halftime, isolating where the issue is, figuring it out, and creating essentially an altered game plan that they can attack what they've been seeing in the first half. So when you're playing the Bills, if you truly want to achieve dominance for 60 minutes, you kind of need to have, you need to, like chess, be 2-3 moves ahead. You had to have created a 30-minute game plan, it feels like, and then already have your own answers to what you think will be the answers to what you originally threw to them. That seems to be the only way you can best a Josh Allen, Joe Brady led offense as of right now. It doesn't seem to matter because the Ravens defense that they just played is a very impressive defense. And in my eyes, from top to bottom, more talented. I think there are higher end pieces potentially on the Jets, but overall, as a unit, I think the Ravens defense takes the cake. And that's just me mainly having a lot of respect for the Kyle Hamiltons, Roquan Smith, Marlon Humphrey, like a lot of guys that fill out that roster and that defense for the Ravens that are very good. And we saw what Allen could do in 15 minutes, essentially. He could absolutely flip a game on its head and figure it out. And they devised an absolute gem of a game plan with a little bit of help from the defense when it needed to get it done. So I'm not overly concerned. And I will just say this is kind of just a general statement, even moving forward. I don't believe there will ever be a man, this is not a good matchup for the Bills offense, because Allen is just that much of an X factor. And I trust at least this coaching staff, both at the head coaching level, McDermott, to recognize things, and then Joe Brady as an offensive coordinator to truly understand what they're seeing in live time, and then go into halftime and kind of create those alternate adjustments, whatever they need to then come out and create a dominant plan of attack in that second half to make magic happen if it's even needed, and or continue dominance. So I from an offensive perspective, I don't really believe there's too much concern going into this for the Bills playing that defense. The flip side we can go into, and I'll kick it back to you, but that's got its own question marks. But for now, with Allen in the offense, no, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty comfortable, even with some of those great players like Sauce Gardner and Williams. They're the Williams twins, because the linebacker as well. He's not too shabby himself, although he was average on this past Sunday, according to some metrics. But he's still a good inside linebacker in his own right.
In my opinion, where the Bills could really mess up in this game, and when I say mess up, I mean keep it close enough where, let's be honest with ourselves, like the Bills did Sunday, keep it close enough where you can steal it at the end. And that's what I think the Jets are going to be looking to do in this game. And how does that happen? What is the greatest equalizer in football? It's turnovers. And that is the thing that Josh Allen has really erased from his game, starting with the beginning of his MVP season last year. And you've heard analysts say time and time again that when Josh Allen plays clean football, he's almost impossible to stop when he's making smart decisions, when he's taking his checkdowns. And I was so impressed in the comeback against the Ravens when the Bills were down by 15 points and Josh Allen is still checking the ball down and not being aggressive and not going into, as Stokes says, sugar high Josh mode. That was such a great sign just for the long term, that I do think that if Josh Allen comes out against the Jets and for whatever reason is chaotic or has a turnover early or forces one to Keon Coleman on Sauce Gardner and it doesn't go well, like that could be a bad sign. But there's just nothing I've seen, Luka, in the last year and games and playoffs of Josh Allen that makes me think that's going to be the case. When you talk about this Jets defense, they do play a very high percentage of man coverage. Football Insights had them at 50% man coverage last week, which is one of the highest in the sport. And there's no reason to believe that that's going to change this week when they take on the Bills, because, right now, who are the Bills' man beater separators? You're talking about Khalil Shakir. You're talking about Tyrell Shavers. Curtis Samuel did not get a jersey last week because I said Tyrell Shavers. I meant to say Joshua Palmer. Joshua Palmer and Khalil Shakir are your two primary man beaters. But Luka, one way to really get a team out of playing man defense is simply when you have a quarterback like Josh Allen in man, your back is to the quarterback because you're chasing your man. In zone, your face is to the quarterback because you're dropping back and playing a spot, essentially. That's an oversimplified way of putting it. It's a lot easier for that quarterback to take off and run. It's week 2. We've seen a concentrated effort from the Bills since Joe Brady took over to have Josh Allen be less aggressive running. So the context of this game, heavy man coverage, division game, also week 2, an opponent you're a touchdown favorite over. Do you think the Bills will unleash Josh Allen running? Or do you think this is going to be one of those games where we have it in our back pocket if we need it, but let's wait to see if we need it first?
it's always a back pocket thing to me, especially early on in the season. I believe you saw even an example of that in the Ravens game week 1. It felt as if it was present in there if needed, but then it didn't really come out to play until the fourth quarter when it was just true. It felt, if you even look at the play-by-play of the fourth quarter against the Ravens, um, Josh Allen was really just kind of a 1-2, all right, see what you got and run it. Whereas the first 3 quarters, you weren't seeing him take off. There were even times where it felt like he could take off and instead still tried to find the pass wherever he could. And in my opinion, to me, that's an indication of there's a message that he's remembering where it's like, hey, try to limit the contact, try to limit the impact of, whatever it is, defenders on top of you, the amount of hits you can have. And then finally where it's like, hey, let's just go get it. Let's go get it. And then Josh Allen kind of unleashes himself. So I believe that every game, and this isn't just for the Jets, this will be for the Thursday night game when we're back live next week talking about that. I genuinely believe, especially early on, when the going is going, Josh Allen's probably being told, if it's there, absolutely take it and do it safely, but don't feel like you need to do it. Now, I say that, and as you presented perfectly, if we're in just like 2 high man coverage and you got everyone just running either go routes or, deep crossers, whatever it is, and all of a sudden you just notice that the C has opened, Josh. And it's like, I mean, I can take the free 20 yards if I please. You do it. Like, and Josh Allen's already gotten down that kind of little hop, the little drop down slide. That's all you got to do. Take your free 15 yards, move on to the next play, things of that nature. I think that will happen, and that will be part of game plan, especially when they see man coverage. I think that's always there, but I don't think there will be anything special. We saw it 2 or 3 years ago in that one midseason game at the Jets. It's the game where he injured his arm a little bit at the end, trying to throw an 80-yard bomb up the sideline. That game, he scored 2 rushing touchdowns because essentially that was the only thing that he was getting from the defense. That reality could happen here if the Jets D is just locking things down left and right. But that really was just, it felt like him taking what they were giving him, and it was a lot. And then from there, the Jets kind of locked things up a little bit more, made things a lot more difficult. And unfortunately, we lost that game at the time. But overall, I don't think, your first 2 months, Josh, I really believe that a conversation's had with Allen, like, hey, take it when you can in a safe manner. Other than that, let's not go crazy. Let's limit those hits and the contact that's being made on you so that you're as close to 100% when the games really start mattering. We're in December when it's, seed positioning, everything like that. And then from there, let's get into January games when we can truly just kind of let you off the leash and go have fun.
Brendan Coleman, my buddy, chimes in with, does this game set up well for James Cook focus game? Limit Josh Allen running, especially since you see the thing that's not there. I think so. One, when you look back, Luka, Ray Davis had a fantastic game against the Jets on that Thursday night game last year when James Cook didn't play. Another stat that I was just looking up is the Jets were a bottom 5 team last year in receiving yards given up to running backs. When you see the Jets twice, thanks, Brendan. And receiving yards to running backs. Now, generally speaking, that's a stat that favors good teams like the Bills, the Chiefs, the Lions were up there. But why is that? It's because late in games when these teams have big leads, quarterbacks like to pad their stats by dumping the ball off to the running back. But you saw some bad teams up there. The Jets and the Saints were the teams that were bad that are up there. And that to me is predictive of giving up passing yards to running backs. I do think that's a way you can beat these Jets, especially now that you talk about not having Mosley anymore and you're working in different linebackers. Not that Mosley was ever great in coverage. Cisco got banged up last week. I do think that's an area you can attack the Jets. The Steelers had 5 receptions last week with their running backs between Warren and Gainwell. Nothing overly explosive. It was really Calvin Austin who went after the Steelers last week, or after the Jets last week. But I would expect the Bills to try to use James Cook and Ty Johnson as those matchups in the passing game and get them involved, as well as just try to establish the run. When you talk about where the Jets are super strong on defense, you mentioned the defensive line, and they have some studs up there on the defensive line. I mean, we know what Williams is all about for sure. He's been one of the best players the Bills go against year in and year out, Quinnen Williams. But then I am really impressed with Will McDonald. Every time I watch the Jets play, he just absolutely pops as an athlete. But what I would say about this, Luca, is if a team's best strength on defense is their defensive line, bring it on, because
Mhm.
that's where the Bills' studs are on offense that aren't named Josh Allen. That's why I would have felt better about the Bills' chances of going to the Super Bowl and competing with the Eagles over the Chiefs, because the Bills are strong up front. It is a matchup game. Let's talk about the injury report, Luca. Tre'Davious White practiced in a limited fashion today. Sean McDermott said that when he does come back, they have a lot of confidence in Tre'Davious White. He wasn't ready to say that the job would be Tre'Davious's when he gets back. My hunch is they're going to slow play this thing with Tre'Davious, especially with the Dolphins game 4 days later. It's a little bit of a tougher ask against the Dolphins, even though they're a mess with Hill and Waddle and Tua and the timing of that offense. I don't think McDermott wants White to come back and then play a game 4 days later. I think it's going to be another case of Dorian Strong. And if Strong has another strong performance, I do wonder if you could see a situation where they rotate Trey White in with Dorian Strong as a way to, one, have some, elongate Tre'Davious White's health, because he's a player that's missed a lot of time with health reasons the last 3 years. Two, get some experience for a young player, which, by the way, you still have Max Harrison coming back. And three, I don't know if Tre'Davious White is still any good. So it might not be a downgrade to keep Strong out there. My hunch is Tre'Davious White's not going to play this week. Dorian Strong will start another game, and then they'll take it from there. What say you?
I think it's a valid point you bring up when it comes to, you have a quick turnaround there as well. I don't know how much that goes into it too much. But there's something there, of course. Trey White's just an individual where the injuries have piled up quickly of recent, and serious ones at that, where even though this is just a groin, it's not necessarily focused on that leg or ankle that he's had issues previously. It's still something where Father Time is not slowing down for anyone, but especially not for Trey White. It might even be picking up. So why rush anything back when you seem to have other trusted options, as young as they may be, there in the ranks? When it comes to Dorian Strong, you still have Jamarcus Ingram even sitting there as well, where, he's had limited play time, but he has shown you in that limited play time, he can still make plays happen. It's not someone you want to lean on for an entire season, but even against those same Dolphins you mentioned on a Thursday night spot last season, he made some big plays and made things happen that it's like, hey, you can lean on that. And you'll just live with the negatives because, of course, he's not your expected number two. But right now, you don't have that number two really locked in or even available if it's Hairston. So the Trey White dynamic of everything, I could take it or leave it. And I don't mean it in any disrespectful way. I'm with you in the mindset of, I'm really not sure if Trey White's any good anyways. It would be nice to have an experienced individual out there, especially if you, in moments where you're trying to play softer coverage and stuff like that, where the brain matters a little bit more than everything else. Trey White could show himself. I mean, Trey White's kind of in that spot where it's like, I'd almost rather he shift to safety, but at the same time, I don't think he's a McDermott safety. So it's one of those weird things where I'm not sure how that would even fit in this defense, but I digress. It's something where I'm okay. I am willing to accept another week of just Dorian Strong and others. I don't think there's any need here to rush a Trey White back. And I don't think that really exists anywhere. Even when Max Harrison after 4 weeks of being on IR, they activate him for return if that happens, and they ramp him up. And I wouldn't expect him to just jump right in immediately unless, after those 4 weeks, the IR was kind of just a necessity. And from there, he is actually 100%. I just think it's one of those things where Trey White is kind of just in his own little bubble where, hey, if you're at 100%, we'll ask you to come in and rotate in and do whatever you can to help this team. But realistically, I don't think he's someone that we're sitting here desiring to come back because he truly can create that difference maker opposite of Christian Benford. I think those days are long behind him, and it's just not something I need to lose sleep over or worry about even going into any matchup, let alone this one.
Good question in chat from Chuck, and I want to get to that after I mention two things. One, like and subscribe on YouTube if you're watching there. We appreciate you. You have your opportunity to win a Keon Coleman signed helmet once we hit our subscriber goal, and it's a free gift. So I like free things. Luca likes free things. Why not try to win free things? Let's wrap up the Tre'Davious White conversation with something that I think is going to sound a little bit disrespectful, and I certainly don't mean it that way. But at this point in time in his career, Tre'Davious White to me is sort of in the same bucket as DeMar Hamlin. And that's recognizing that for a large portion of his career, Tre'Davious White was an all-pro, Pro Bowl level player. DeMar Hamlin was never that. Tre'Davious White could end up being a Wall of Famer. DeMar Hamlin was never that. But at this stage of his career, I feel like we know what he is, similar to Hamlin. It's probably not good enough, but it can get you by. But you're always looking for a better answer. And that is why I advocate for sticking with Cole Bishop at safety, even through the growing pains. And that is why I would love Max Harrison to be out there getting these reps. That is not an option. But for now, I would rather continue to see what comes from this mystery box that is Dorian Strong, especially when we're in the softer part of the schedule. I mean, you don't want to be disrespectful, but I said that twice now, and I feel like I've said disrespectful things. But two of the next three quarterbacks the Bills face are going to be Justin Fields, who does not have a notoriously good arm, and then Spencer Rattler week 4. What a time to experiment with a cornerback. What a time to get his feet wet. Cole Bishop and Dorian Strong, both of which I think should be on the field. It's a great time to earn experience. Let's get back to Chuck's question, though. This is more of a long-term view question, Luca. If the Bills don't win the Super Bowl, is McDermott gone? This truly feels like the Bills' year. What do you think?
No. And I don't want to, it's not like I'm kicking it back. One of the McDermott needing to win a Super Bowl, we talked about it in our season long. We've discussed kind of, is this Super Bowl win or bust? And I kind of, if you listen to that episode, discussed how I don't even believe it to be get to the dance and we're good. But that's of course where the goal and expectation should be. I also believe that ownership, and to go to that level, ownership doesn't want to sit here and feel like they need to see what's behind another door when what they have that they would have to pay out as well for what it's worth is still seemingly better than pretty much everything else that's out there when it comes to end product, right? And I'm not saying McDermott, there's only a handful of coaches in the entire NFL that are better than McDermott. I don't believe that necessarily to be true. I think there's more than 2, 3, 4 head coaches in this league that are better than McDermott. But what McDermott has done for this team year in and year out, the results are hard to argue. And from there, let's say they just don't get it. They don't get past that proverbial hump that is the Kansas City Chiefs once again. Although I don't think the Chiefs, at least right now, hot take, it doesn't look like you're going to have to go through Kansas City and or the Chiefs right now in the AFC. It seems like you got to go through Buffalo. But
you mean City? I thought you meant like actually the team, and I was like, whoa.
No. The city.
Geography, not team.
Yeah. But
You're saying this out loud, Luca.
Yeah. To get through that team, if they don't do that, it's not like I think Terry's finally going to be like, this is it. We're done. We're done with this. McDermott, hit the road. Let's see what else we got there, because the scary part, it's the classic. The grass is not always greener on the other side. Mm-hmm. And what you have right now, it doesn't feel like it's good enough, but I really challenge anyone out there to tell me what the hell you're going to bring in that feels like a bona fide, absolute certainty is going to get you over that hump. And I don't think that exists out there. I don't even think, we talked, 2 years ago about Ben Johnson and the hot name that he was at the time and things of that nature. And I was all for the idea of Ben Johnson, but to really sit there and pull the trigger on an idea like that, when you are sitting here in the prime of Josh Allen and have an offense that at that point in time was starting to find itself and figure things out and yada, like so many things. It's like, how do you just then justify blowing that all up, having to pay these individuals off to then bring in something else and hopefully it work right out the gate? That's a very, in my opinion, unrealistic expectation to have. So you would have to be willing to accept that there's going to be 1 year of just a new organizational philosophy, growing pains, understanding everything above that, unfortunately will not yield success most likely. First year coaches have shown success previously, but overall it's not realistic to think that is something that is an absolute certainty just because you have 17 under center. That's not That's not real. That's not how it works. So overall, I just don't believe Terry's sitting there itching to get rid of McDermott just because it would potentially be another year without a Super Bowl. I do think that expectations are, of course, are getting there, but I don't think McDermott's on a hot seat as much as some other individuals may believe it to be.
And when it comes to Pagula, just look across town at the hockey team and how they've been spinning their
all
wheels
right.
trying to find. I mean, people forget the Pagulas found Sean McDermott.
Yes.
That was after they hired Rex Ryan and threw a parade for him, and after they begged Doug Marrone to stay, and he took one look around and quit. So there's real reason to believe that they lucked into McDermott, and Kim Pagula had a lot to do with that, in my opinion. And, for reasons we all are aware of, that's not going to be the case going forward. It's a long conversation, right? The McDermott one. And you bring up a good point, because it's very easy to be like, well, he's not a top 10 coach, which I think he is. But if you want to be like, well, he's not Andy Reid's not available. That's not going to happen.
Right.
There's people out there that love Mike Tomlin. I would take Sean McDermott over Mike Tomlin every single time. But if you love Mike Tomlin's not coming available. Sean Payton's not coming available. So Ben Johnson was a good idea, but Belichick, that was my idea about a month ago. We're going to just forget about that one. Right up there with Jets winning the division last year. Ben Johnson was such a good idea 2 years ago, and it's hard to imagine a coordinator being as hot as Ben Johnson was coming into this hiring cycle. But just look back to this Monday night game. Coaching errors, rookie coaching errors, kicking the ball short of the end zone, allowing, with like 2 minutes and 4 seconds left, the Vikings to return the kick and get past the 2-minute warning. And now you've blown one of your timeouts. And I understand everybody's thinking, if you're out there, you don't like McDermott, the first thing that comes to mind is how he mismanaged the 13 seconds game. I understand. I hear you. That was 2021, folks. Like, he's gotten better since then. Look how he managed the end of the Ravens game, by the way. They didn't try to score at the end. They just let the clock run down and kick the field goal. I think we always look at the lowest moment of these coaches and players and hold them to that. And there is a group of Bills fans that, until they win the Super Bowl, will never forgive Sean McDermott for how he handled 13 seconds. And I understand that. But when you look at it from a larger point of view, to Luka's point, what's a better idea? One of my ideas is I would look at the person picking the talent before I look at the person coaching the talent. Because if we're going to sit here and say this is Josh Allen and a bunch of people being carried by Josh Allen, yet they're continuously making it to the second and third round of the playoffs every year, knocking off Lamar Jackson twice, having inches away from beating Patrick Mahomes 3 times, that's a good thing for a coach. But I also think, to answer the question, how does it end? If they come up short against the Chiefs again for reasons that are largely not Sean McDermott's fault. Like last year, I don't put that game on Sean McDermott. I put that game on, 1, Kyer Elam's inability to play any kind of defense. 2, the offensive line and Josh Allen's inability to convincingly get a yard that they got all year long, and referees messing up the spot. 3, Dalton Kincaid, unfortunately, not coming down with a ball that would have been an amazing catch. But hey, it's the AFC Championship game. It's the last play on offense. Let's make an amazing catch. Go back to the previous year. Tyler Bass missing a field goal. Stephon Diggs having a ball going through his hands. There's examples that aren't McDermott's fault. So if it comes down to it, and imagine this one, folks. They lose to the Chiefs by an eyelash in the playoffs. I know it's hard to figure out what that would look like, but it's not necessarily McDermott's fault. I don't think I could sit here and say, well, we got to try something else, because in my mind, I know how football works. I know that if you're that close, you don't necessarily want to shake it up. But I do think that if they take a tangible step back, this is a team that has been to the second round of the playoffs and beyond since 2020. If they get eliminated in the first round of the playoffs and the quarterbacks that have eliminated them are Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, and this is not going back to 2019 when it was Deshaun Watson, but Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes. That's an A-list of A-list quarterbacks. If they get to the first round of the playoffs and they get eliminated by Daniel Jones or 37 or 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers, the conversation changes. Now you're tangibly going backwards. If you go to the second or third round and you lose by an eyelash to Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes, how mad can I realistically be? These are Hall of Fame quarterbacks with Super Bowl winning head coaches with rosters that everybody believes that studies this thing are better than the Bills roster. So it's frustrating. I do think the Bills will get over the hump eventually and get their Super Bowl, but I don't know if it's going to be this year. And I certainly wouldn't want to say Super Bowl or bust and blow this whole thing up because the Bills are so close. And really, I do believe that to win a Super Bowl, get in, stay hot, and get lucky. And the way to do it is keep getting in. And eventually, like the Peyton Manning Colts, you get over the hump and you win the thing. All right, Luka, what's your biggest concern in this matchup against the Jets?
Biggest concern, honestly, it might be just simply it's the defense. I don't want to just say it in the general as a whole, but we already saw one game against a very, 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 very good offense where we look small. And this just feels like yet another opportunity where we can look small. And to see that in back-to-back weeks will just be soul crushing for one. And that's just the recipe of success for the Jets to linger and stay around, in my opinion. That's the only way they're going to be able to do that is play big boy football and just continue to make Bernard, Milano, Rapp, and make all of them look small. Emphasize, and make it to a point to get Dorian Williams on the field more often because it's just you need to do something different that isn't just staying in nickel and being comfortable with it because Taron Johnson, as great of a nickel as he is, he's not exactly a world beater that can supplement a third linebacker in there to defend the run. Not that even that worked against the Ravens as well, but that's just something you need to do. And then from there, it's did the rookies on the interior defensive line look great? No. Did they look bad? Not to my eye. To others, they might have. So, but they're rookies. So I'm not sitting here to bash them. It's just that's something that can get exposed. And if we're trying to play and match up on big boy football and you're just getting exposed because of that, the rookie rotation you have next to Ed Oliver or whoever, and then you're looking small at the second level, that is Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano, and then you have Taylor Rapp just running the opposite direction for the first 5 seconds of a play continuously, you have a problem once again on your hands. And that's where the concern is because that's where Breece Hall, who seems to be as hot can be, will just run it all over you. He's not Derrick Henry, but he's got that burst right now. It's clear as day that he looks very, very good and motivated to play ball. And Justin Fields, as strange as it was, looked good as a passer against the Steelers. There could be a little bit of a revenge factor in there. I mean, his comments after the game really gave the impression that his focus might have not been entirely on just getting the team win. And he was just more focused on making sure he looked impressive and the offense looked good. I hope, Josh, it feels like an appropriate response, but that's what it felt like to me. But overall, he did look good week one, and maybe he'll just come back down to earth because that motivation to show his former team that you should have stuck with me is not there anymore. But Breece Hall, Justin Fields looked good enough week one to really put a scare on the Steelers that, I mean, for me, just the defensive unit looking small is a serious concern that it could just replicate itself this week after doing that very thing and essentially making Josh Allen put on a cape and some to get that win out. And if it wasn't for Ed Oliver just being an absolute menace, this defense would have been absolutely run off the field. We would be 0-1 in this. And my concern would be tenfold about them and how they're going to look against the Jets. So it's just an overall don't look that small again. They're going to have issues. And I acknowledge that because they just don't have the size and ability to play big boy ball. That's fine because once you get a big enough lead, the general wisdom is you just need to have the speed and coverage out there to take away the big play. That's how this team is designed. But if you just keep letting the Jets stick around because of that big boy ball, similar to the Ravens, it will be heavily concerning.
My biggest concern, surprisingly, is Bills offensive related. And I'll tell you, I'm not really concerned about the defense. I will say if they struggle against the Jets, if the Jets sniff 30 like they did on the Steelers last week, even if the Bills win and they're 2-0, I'm going to be in a bad mood because I think that's a trend now. That's not just two Hall of Fame, maybe all-time great players, Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry got the best of you in a matchup that just isn't a good matchup for the Bills, but now it's the Jets. Okay, like this is supposed to be the year that you get the 1 seed. You just knocked off the Ravens in a memorable game, and you're going to let the Jets go up and down the field on you. I need to see this defense come back, have some pride, because if they do go out there and Brees Hall and Braylon Allen and Justin Fields combined for almost 200 yards rushing, then we're going to have a real serious conversation about, okay, Bean, we need to make a trade or something, because when you look at the nucleus of this team, there's not enough there. I understand Michael Hoyt, Larry Ogunjobi are coming back, but those aren't superstars by any means. And what can we do to improve this defense? Because it looks like at least 2 weeks in, it's a defense that again is going to require Josh Allen to be perfect. I don't anticipate that happening. And where I do wonder about the Bills, and I hope I'm wrong, but this wide receiver group to me reminds me of the wide receiver group the Bills assembled prior to the Amari Cooper trade last year. And keep in mind what I'm saying. I'm not saying Amari Cooper was great for the Bills. He clearly wasn't. But the wide receiver group struggled so much in Baltimore and in Houston last season that Brandon Beane went out and spent a third-round pick on Amari Cooper because they had nobody that could separate. This is a great litmus test for that. I thought Joshua Palmer was mostly fine against the Ravens, although like Keon Coleman, a lot of it came late. So it's hard to differentiate like the true meat and potatoes from the, hey, Josh Allen put on his cape and somebody had to catch the ball. That's simplifying it, but you know what I mean. If the Bills can have a functional day passing, I don't need Josh Allen to have 400 yards, but if they can go 250 yards passing, have multiple touchdown scoring drives, and just look like they are the Bills on offense. They don't need to go down and score 40, but if they can score 27 while the Jets are out there, scoring 14, I will feel great, especially if Joshua Palmer's out there getting open against man coverage. I'm quietly excited about what I saw from Keon Coleman, and like what can he do if he gets matched up against Sauce Gardner. I do think Khalil Shakir against Carter, if he plays in the slot, is a winnable matchup for the Bills. I like Kincaid, even though the Jets are typically strong against tight ends. I like Kincaid and Knox's ability to get open in this matchup. So all of that, I would like to see the Bills make some hay in the passing game. But I am concerned that if it looks or resembles the Ravens or Texans game from last year, my prevailing thoughts about this wide receiver group being underwhelming will amplify. And that's where even in a win, I'll come on our post-game show and say, Luka, I need you to remind me it's week 2 and teams are still getting into game shape and it's not time to panic. Oh, Luka's taking a drink.
Yeah, sorry. My throat just got dry right as you kicked it to me. The early season dynamic of an offense struggling and fans reacting in such a way where it's like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Now, last season, the concerns were somewhat valid because it wasn't just as simple of inefficient due to dysfunction or penalty issues and things that are conventionally, Josh, cleaned up, right? Those things where it's just like tighten it up, figure it the F out. We can operate more efficiently, just need the reps. Last year, when Shakir was banged up and eventually out, it was a clear indication of, oh my God, no one else can get open if you just have a defender on your hip. And Josh was far less comfortable doing what he needed to do, throwing to places, and he felt he just had to be absolute Superman and didn't have the individuals to assist him at all in that situation. I think the concern is there again this season, but what is encouraging at least is an individual who was involved in that unit, even when Shakir was out, Keon Coleman, to that Ravens game, he showed he's more up to the physicality that he needs to be because he's just not a separator. Like I laughed when you saw some things out there that said he had zero separation, and then you had individuals posting some examples of stuff. For instance, that last catch, and they're like, I mean, how can you say zero separation when you have this? It's like, well, I mean, cover zero, playing 12 yards off of you, and you get told to run a quick slant. I'm not giving you separation props for that. I would like to believe that any NFL receiver that's told, hey, you got 12-yard off coverage, please run a slant for me, can do so and get inside leverage on that. Like, I would love to think that that's possible. And it should be. So there's certain instances where, Keon's going to be open and that's fine, but it's thanks to circumstances like that. But when he is not separating and things, what we saw even just in glimpses last game where it feels he's more up to that challenge and he's going to fight for that ball. He's got a little bit more of that strength to him. He's bringing the other things you need to bring to the table if you're not going to be a separator in this league. And that is encouraging to me. You have Kincaid, who, in my opinion, looked much more dynamic in the limited time we saw him in week one than he has up until this point. You have other people stepping up where it still might not be 100%, in its full groove as a unit yet, because it's early season, and that's where I remind people. But I don't think we're in a circumstance like we were last season early on due to some injuries and things like that, where it was recognized, oh my goodness, Mac Hollins is out there playing wide receiver too. And I mean, Mac Hollins is not someone I'm ever expecting to play meaningful snaps, although now he's doing so in New England, strangely enough. But he's not separating. It's like, I'm not looking at Mac Hollins. You need to create plays to give him separation. You need to do things from an offensive mindset and play calling that will create openings for these players. And I think that, by the way, will also come in time. Those are things that you develop over time because you start doing the self-scouting. You start figuring out what teams are doing early on to you that is creating the confusion and the problems that then you can design or alter your call sheet that will allow those openings to be exploited. And I think that's a perfect thing that we saw last season during the meat of the schedule and all of a sudden into the playoffs. So I understand the concerns you have like that, but it's definitely going to be one where, as you said, if we have offensive struggles, and this isn't the prettiest of game, win or loss, doesn't matter, in that regard. And we're Sunday night, we're recording, and you're like, Luka, this offense is a disaster. It just doesn't know what it's doing. It's tripping over itself. Allen can't trust anything. He's double, triple clutching everything. And I'll just be like, look, everyone can have a bad going. It sucks to have it in this situation, but overall, it is week 2. They're going to get out the problems and the hitches and the issues. You have to remember, last week was the first game that this unit even stepped on the field as its own self. Mm-hmm. They didn't play a lick in the preseason together. Some of them played some snaps, but they weren't playing with Josh Allen. Half the starting offensive line wasn't playing. Like, there were things, well, actually, I guess they did play, but regardless, that doesn't matter in this regard. The offensive line is just getting their live reps in. So you just have to get through these things. You got to grease up the cogs in the machine, and eventually come week 4 and 5, if you're having these issues, now the concern stokes the flames, and you're trying to figure out what's going on. And that's where you start raging a little bit more, and it's understandable. I think week 2 is a little bit early to press that gas pedal there, Josh.
I'm going to ask you in a second, outside of Chiefs Eagles, what is your favorite non-Bills week 2 game that you're most looking forward to watching in your living room? But the first thing I'm going to talk about now is the Bills did sign Matthew Prater to their roster, which is not a surprise when you look at some of the kicking issues that were around the league. The Niners did release Jake Moody. If they hadn't done that, Prater would have all likelihood be gone. I still don't know that Prater's going to be the kicker the rest of the year. When you look historically, his numbers are very similar to Tyler Bass's. This team believes in Tyler Bass, and I do think if he's healthy, Tyler Bass will be the guy, with the caveat of if Prater stays perfect, or, if he just goes on this run, you ride the hot foot, as Lucas said. The point spread for this game, Luka, before we get into the other non-Bills game, started off as 7. Now it is 6.5. Once it got down to 6.5, everybody was on the Bills, because that's a hot number, because now you get a touchdown. The 7, it's like you can bet the Jets and you can still push at a touchdown. Now you need the Jets to stay within a touchdown. It's Wednesday. I'm not holding you to this. Lucas Locks is going to come out Sunday morning on TikTok, YouTube, Twitter. Yes.
It comes out on Saturday mornings on TikTok and Instagram, Sunday mornings on Twitter. So if you want them when they are posted, just in case those lines are just got to go over to the little bit of a side channel. Okay. Am I doing that intentionally? Kind of, but also at the same time, it's a lot easier to quick post there. And then I'll just be like, hey, Sunday morning, don't forget, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, sorry.
Early read on this game. Jets plus 6.5, Bills minus 6.5. I'll give you mine first. I'm going to take the Bills in this spot. When the line first came out at 7, I thought that was a little heavy. It seemed a little heavy. It's division matchup, which is another reason why maybe you shouldn't freak out if the offense doesn't look like it's great because these teams are familiar with each other. But at the end of the day, this is a Bills team that has Super Bowl aspirations. This is a Jets team that has a new quarterback that is basically a journeyman, a new head coach that is still finding his way, and a roster that is just not on the same level as the Bills roster. We have Josh Allen, they have Justin Fields, we have Super Bowl aspirations. They're just hoping to break a playoff drought. Maybe it's close, maybe it's scary for a while, but ultimately the better team should pull away. I want to see some professionalism out of the Bills. This is a tougher spot given what they faced on Sunday, what they have coming up in 4 days. But this is a Bills team that's been there, done that. Let's not let the best regular season game that some of us have ever seen go by the wayside because you give that 1-game lead back the next week because you couldn't beat Justin Fields. I think the Bills win this game something along the lines of 27-16, where it's never that scary.
That's a fair, like, so my head goes in two places with this line. On the surface, 6.5 is a beautiful number in betting, right? Like everything you laid out is exactly right. 6.5 allows you to get that 7-point win, even if it seems like it's a 2-score game there. And or it's one where the Bills get that touchdown to go from a 4-point lead to an 11-point lead, whatever it is, to get you that cover, just to get that security blanket over the dub. That could absolutely take place. But the Jets are, even after saying it's a different coaching staff and all that, the Jets just historically are a team that play the Bills very difficult. And that offense, even in its mid-season peak, does seem to hit some speed bumps. And I think that is just a testament to some of the players that are always on the other side there. And that's, in regards to Quinnen Williams, I can't believe I said Leonard earlier in this show. That was my bad. The dang Williamses, especially when they used to play in New York. Anyways, the Quinnen Williams, Sauce Gardner. I think there's even other players on that defense that don't get as much love that are still very solid on the defensive side of the ball. They're going to play tough early. And it's one where I just see a game that it's comfortable, but the score line doesn't indicate that, Josh. And that's what makes that 6.5 even a little bit weird, because you could easily see a score that is 27-21. And that's a game where, the Bills essentially scored on almost every drive. And I say scored, not necessarily get a touchdown on every drive, just scored every drive to get up to that 27 mark. But the Jets sprung loose a couple big plays. They got it to 21, but then they're just fighting on 4th downs, not converting it. Weren't able to hit that one last big play, and the Bills are able to chew the remainder of the clock in order to see it out. That's kind of where my head sits, which makes me extremely nervous. That's where I would tell people I'm not exactly going to be jumping over the moon to bet this game for one. This is a game I would put in a large teaser more than anything else to bring that line down with a few other games that I'm a lot more comfortable with. And I think the best part about this is, at least through DraftKings, because they make it so easy to see where the public's betting right now, this is a perfect indication of how I think it makes sense. 96% of money line bets are on the Bills. That shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. That's pretty standard. But only 65% of the public is on Bills minus 6.5, even with that line moving down to there. That is a substantial difference, where if you're someone that's not even comfortable with it, see where that goes. Because a lot of times late in the week, especially when you see such a big disparity between money line and line betting, is you might start seeing some sharp and late money hitting that dog that individuals believe, hey, it's a divisional game, it'll be closer, stuff like that. And you might even get that thing to like 5.5, depending on how big the money is. I don't forecast this being one where you'll get a flood of cash on Bills minus 6.5, where it'll have to go back to that 7 number until at least Sunday morning. So you have time to sit on it, feel it out, see where it goes, and really play it like a stock market situation, where ultimately it's a good enough line, in my opinion, Josh, that I'm not touching this until it feels like I can at least build it into that teaser situation that I like, and or, hey, this is where it finally moved to. It's Sunday morning. Let's sprinkle a little action on it and live with it. But it's a very intriguing line because that 6.5 number, if people don't understand, the 3 7s, those are beautiful numbers in the regard of if you get 6.5, 2.5, 3.5, depending on the side you like, stuff like that. Those are the numbers you really want to do. If a line's sitting at 6.5, but you like the dog by the point, get it to 7.5, stuff like that. I'm not telling you to do these things. I'm just saying it's generally a good idea because it pays out more than not. And a lot of times you want to sit on that kind of stuff.
All right. One word answer. Confidence level that the Bills will win this game. I will make this a weekly part of the show. High, very high, moderately high. I guess that's 2 words, but you don't have to explain yourself. Just how confident are you that the Bills win this game?
I'll give it a moderately high. I'll give it a solid high. You know what? Because I was going to say numerical wise, it'd be a 7 out of 10. Okay. So that'd be pretty standard high. I think there's just quick one up on top of it. The speed bumps are definitely there, but overall, as long as the Bills are focused and take care of business, they should be able to walk out of there with a win.
I agree with you. I agree with you on all things that's concerning, and I agree with you on my confidence level. It's hard to see the Bills losing this game unless they give it away, which is certainly possible. All right. Last thing, let's look outside this game, and let's not talk about Eagles Chiefs. By the way, glad Jalen Carter did not get suspended. When I was like, he should be suspended. He spit on Dak Prescott. Wait, who do they play week 2? The Chiefs. He's forgive him. He learned his lesson, so he'll be there. Go Eagles, by the way. Yeah. What is your favorite non-Bills, non-Chiefs Eagles game this week?
So I think the layup is the Thursday night game. As someone that hates Thursday night, the Thursday night game is a spectacular one. Commanders at the Packers. If I take that one away, I would honestly say one of the sneaky good ones is Monday night, the finale, Chargers at Raiders. I love this game because there's something in it. When you have the Chiefs, who going into that game could be 0-2 now, and you have the Chargers, who just came off that win over the Chiefs, playing the Raiders, who now showed that there's different cooking going on at the high level with Pete Carroll at the helm. And as a Pete Carroll hater, I still do respect him as a good coach. Like I hate the man because he was pretty dang good for a long period of time for 2 different places that I despised as well. So there's a reason for it. And that's one where if the Chargers are still the Chargers, the Raiders could all of a sudden find themselves, Josh, as the leaders in the AFC West. And I still think, as much as people were loving on the Chargers because it was a very impressive win in Brazil, there's something going on in Vegas that I just can't get and look past that tells me that the Chargers are in fact still the Chargers, and those Raiders do feel like the team that are going to walk away with that win and be 2-0 in the AFC West. That will be 2-0, 1-0 in the AFC West and leading the division. That will be wild going into week 3 if that is the case, because I do believe the Eagles will be able to go into Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs for what it's worth. And then from there, if you beat the Chargers, they will drop to 1-1, of course, and you will have supremacy early on, and it's a long season in that AFC West. That I think that's a sneaky good one. If you're trying to get me to say Panthers at Cardinals, unfortunately, no, I don't think that's a marquee game. But no, I will still be to say that. I will still be watching that one heavily.
So my favorite one, I think, is probably the other Monday night game, Bucks at Texans, just because I want to see what the Texans are. They lost to the Rams last week. This is a very respectable Bucks team coming in this week. Are the Texans for real, or are they going to slide back kind of like the Bengals did after a couple years up with the big boys? So, I mean, the Texans did make it to the second round of the playoffs last year, and they do have an easier division. But my biggest thing about week 2 is 0-1, whatever, you can get past it. When you fall to 0-2, the statistical data that says your likelihood of making the playoffs plummets. And there's a couple divisional matchups this week where 2 division rivals are facing off, and they're both 0-1. The NFC North, kind of interesting. You have the Lions hosting Ben Johnson and the Bears. My problem with that game, Luka, is I just don't, in my heart of hearts, believe that's going to be a good game. You have the Bears coming off short rest on the road against a Lions team who stunk up the joint and against a Lions team that knows Ben Johnson's offense front and back. I think that has blowout written all over it. On our side of the fence, though, Patriots Dolphins, fascinating. You and I came into this season both thinking this Patriots team was one to keep an eye on. I still think there's a path there for that. However, losing at home to the Raiders was not on my bingo card. Now, the Dolphins could not have looked worse week 1. What is the story going to be after this game, week 2? The Dolphins are a tire fire, trade Tyreek Hill, trade Jalen Waddle, fire Mike McDaniel, or now the Patriots have lost at home to the Raiders and to the team that we all universally believe, maybe outside of the Saints, is the worst team in football right now. Either way, it's going to be fascinating for us because it's one of our division rivals. I don't really have a rooting interest in this because I do think in my heart of hearts, I believe that if the Dolphins play at their ceiling, they can at least put a scare into the Bills. I don't believe that to be true of the Patriots. So I'd like to see the Patriots kind of continue to put the Dolphins down and then let the Bills just drive that final nail in next Thursday. Give them 12 days to fire everybody, or 10 days to fire everybody after that. But I just curious to see how it goes because those are two organizations at two different points, both of which thought for a variety of reasons this was a really important year for them, and both had a catastrophic start to the season.
The Dolphins one in me is so conflicted because I'm with you. I share a lot of thoughts in like, hey, let's put that nail in the coffin. 0-3. Watch the dumpster fire that is Miami and all the, everything that's going on. I'm not a McDaniels fan either, so it's just like everything about that will be enjoyable. But if that happens, Josh, and all of a sudden the Chiefs figure out a way financially to make a move for Tyreek Hill happen, that would suck. And I don't need to see that. So the cynic in me of let's not let the Chiefs benefit from the Dolphins' failure is like, hey, Dolphins, can you try at least until the deadline not be a total dumpster fire so that Tyreek's stuck there and you guys have to deal with your own self, although you will have Rashee Rice back by then. Let's not make those worlds come back because there's a lot of stats out there too, for what it's worth, that Patrick Mahomes, since Tyreek Hill has left, has been the worst starting quarterback currently in the NFL in the deep passing game. His percentages are atrocious. So that one thing coming back to make him a top 5 again with the deep ball, I don't need to see that become real once more. So Dolphins, in a weird, sick, twisted way, I may find myself rooting for you because I just don't need to see Tyreek Hill leave quite yet and you guys be a dumpster fire so quick. So just a little sprinkle on top to everything you talked about on that one.
You're familiar with the AJ Styles Undertaker meme, right? Where AJ Styles is standing there laughing like, ha, 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 ha. Undertaker standing right behind him like, you don't know what's coming. That's Bills fans after the Dolphins implode week 2 and maybe like implode week 3, and we're just living it up and watching their misery, and Tyreek Hill's requesting a trade, and that Undertaker's Andy Reid. And he's just like, you have no idea what's coming, but it's going to be fantastic to watch your reaction. I agree with you. That's a good point. Brandon brings up a good point. He says, Tyreek has another NFL investigation starting. I can't see the Chiefs going after another potentially unavailable wide receiver. That is true. I don't know how new it is. I just know the information is new to the public. I know TMZ got a hold of it, but I think some of the stuff is maybe a year or so old. I'm not really following it that closely, but I mean, the Chiefs have not exactly been a team that shied away from controversial players. I think mainly it would come down to how do they feel about Xavier Worthy? Is he going to come back soon? Yeah. If so, they probably would stay away because they will get Rice back. Final comment of the night. Drunken Hill Cult. I am already scared without reading what it's going to be. Joined late, but can't wait to come back and watch. Rivalries, jerseys, thoughts, go Bills. I was nervous about the name. Great question. Luka, the rivalry jerseys came out for sale today. I like them. I don't know that I would buy one just because I'm not a jersey guy. Like, I don't wear a jersey outside of my house unless I'm going to a game. So in that regard, I can't see a scenario where I'd want to have like a one-off jersey when I could have just the regular home blue Josh Allen or the road white or even the color rush red. That's just me. I think they're fine. They don't like wow me, but I think they're fine. I think they're cool. I don't have a problem with them. What about you?
I'm a big jersey person. If I'm not sad to admit, my closet is littered with it. Since I was a young little lad, I've always had this thing with jerseys, and I love collecting them. I have an extensive collection. I'm also though with you. I wear jerseys to parties, events, things like that at times if it feels appropriate and stuff. The only ones I wear in the general public though are generally soccer kits, just because those are a little bit more shirt-like.
Kits. Look at you.
Yeah, things like that. But this particular uniform for the Bills is what I would define as a on-field only, and I say that because when you look at, thank you, Sammy.
Inside sources say.
What's when you look at it in like the shoulders even have a little bit of like the gray, silver, snow effect to them and things like that. I don't think it looks great to wear as a fan. I think there's something odd about it. And like you said, even on top of it, those one-offs, they really have to pop or stand out to me in a certain way. It's one of those ones where on the field, all white with those little detailings, it's going to look phenomenal. On a person sitting in the stands at watching a game, I'm going to look at it and be like, I don't know if that's what I would have used my resources for a new jersey, because as someone that likes to buy a new one every few years, whatever it is, that is not one that I'm rushing to the store to get and or rushing online to buy. I just think it's okay. It's whatever. It won't be one to me that stands out in 5-10 years, Josh. I don't think that's going to be one we look back and be like, man, I wish I bought one of those and stuff. Like there's certain ones in all sports that, like, there's one to this day, for instance, the 17-18 third, I'll call it a jersey for you, third jersey of Liverpool. It was the highlighter orange.
Yeah.
I still try to find that solid one. I cannot find it anywhere. I wish I got it. Stuff like that. There's certain ones that you go back to. This will not be one of those ones. I think it'll be like, those look good on the field the one time they wore them, move on with our lives. Like it's cool for what it is.
And you and I have a different existence too. You live in Buffalo, so anything you wear is going to be accepted as Bills. I live in St. Louis, so I like to have my Bills stuff be like traditional Bills colors. I don't want somebody walking up to me in a store and trying to figure out what team it is. It's almost like I want my flag showing that I'm wearing a Bills hat. I want it to be definitively a blue Bills jersey kind of thing. That's where I'm at. McChronicle out there saying it's football, by the way, and he is a big football fan. We follow him on Twitter, and boy, he's live tweeting some stuff. Speaking of New Jersey, Costa is a Giants fan. New Jersey. What's up, Costa? How you doing? Good to see you. Need a break from today's craziness. I hear you, Costa. We're talking about it a little bit off the air. Certainly not getting into it on the air, but exhausting for a lot of reasons, tragic for a lot of reasons. Not going to get into it, but definitely hear you. And go ahead and trade me Marvin Harrison in Dynasty. That will be a nice distraction from anything that is crazy going on. That would be wonderful. And hope you're having a good evening. By the way, I think if the Giants lose to the Cowboys this week, it could be Jackson Dart time.
About time.
That'd be exciting. All right, but you know what time it is, Luka? Time for us to get out of here. But I am so glad that we are back in this spot on Wednesday night's live show. Next week, it is going to be a full-fledged pregame show. We'll have the final injury report. It'll be the night before the Bills game against the Dolphins. Hopefully, we're talking about a 2-0 Bills team and a Dolphins team that doesn't want to trade Tyreek Hill to the Chiefs, hopefully. Just send CD, he says. We'll see. I doubt it, though. Anyway, for Luka, I am Josh McCarty. If you're watching on YouTube, please take a moment to like and subscribe, leave a comment, let us know on Twitter. You will enter yourself in a chance to win a signed Keon Coleman helmet. I will bring that up one more time while I do that. If you follow us on Twitter, we really greatly appreciate you. The push is on for 10,000 followers on there. Luka and I will be back on Monday morning, anywhere your podcast can be found, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, if you like looking at our faces. We record it Sunday night shortly after the Bills game ends, so you're going to get our fresh perspective on that. Always look forward to that, and then we'll be back, obviously, as I mentioned, next week for Bills Chat Live. For Luka, I am Josh McCarty. We will talk to you next time on Bills Chat.